I thought I will start with a couple of the questions because this was supposed to be interactive. So there's one question saying that in the picture it seems like the MyData operator is in the center rather than citizen. And then there's another one. Not sure if red flagging potential burnout employees and giving that information to managers and insurances is a good idea. This is basically where we started. What is the value of personal data and to whom it is valuable, and how does it position consumers and citizens while doing that? Hugely complicated field. We have been doing a lot of research in the past years, and I don't think we still know the answer to those questions because it really depends. So it's all about the context. So what I'm going to give you is a kind of an overview of what the datafication of health field, what does it look like in terms of current research in the social sciences field. And a lot of the social sciences literature has really been reactionary to this kind of huge enthusiasm which our project has also been generating, that now everything is going to change and we have e-health, m-health, medicine 2.0. But the thing is that we don't really know where all of these things are going. So as we are working, more questions are being raised, which are also extremely complicated. Biobanks see this field differently. Governmental databases come from a different angle. Clinical healthcare has their own issues. Continuous patient monitoring, we're talking about chronic patients where many of these things can be very revolutionary. Diabetics have already some sort of history of doing this. Then there are other areas where it hasn't even started. We have biosensors and biohacker communities which are very into the idea that I'll just take control of my healthcare. Things are emerging from there which are, I think they are very exciting, but how the biohacker knowledge would meet this kind of more traditional healthcare setting is an open question. We have personalized medicine practices which are kind of forming, but with very different pace in different areas. So we did a review article on the datafication of health, and what we basically found were parallel discussions that are not really talking to each other currently. So one of the things that has been identified is datafied power. And when we were going through the literature, I was actually horrified. The credit scoring agencies are coming to the health field with the force. And what they're doing, they're scoring us based on our health and frailty. They're scoring us based on what is our medical adherence score. So, and this is really dystopian in many ways. Of course, we cannot. It's not happening in Europe to the same extent that it's happening in the US, but it's one trend that needs to be taken very seriously. Then we see a very interesting literature around living with data. What does this data actually mean to people? There's now an abundance of applications and whatever, and this market is like completely bloated. Most of these apps are not even downloaded. Maybe 5 people, the ones who develop them, and a few others download them. So there's just a lot of stuff that is not useful to anybody. So basically, with this living with data thread, we have tried to identify what is interesting in this field, what is something that keep people going, and in that sense, we are also working closely with people from the quantified self movement. The third discussion is around technologies, around design. So basically, I will introduce this a little bit more, like where do these actually come from, these 3 discussions. So the first one is really the datafied power field is about exploitation, surveillance, neoliberal governance, and this is actually what also the MyData movement is kind of a reaction to. So we are here amongst data activists who have realized that something has gone wrong in the digital economy. And what has gone wrong it's the fact that our personal data is being harvested and we have no control over where it's going. Companies monetize data which is collected from us, either us knowing that it's collected of us or we don't even realize it. When it comes a problem is when that data is aggregated and sold, and then things about us are being kind of analyzed based on that data. Helen Nissenbaum is a very good researcher to follow if you're interested in these questions. Then the living with data, that's all done more with like case studies, and that's also what we have done. I don't believe that we actually need that much data from different sources, because one data set combined to something else can be extremely useful for getting interesting insights. So basically, to identify what data streams are actually valuable to people, what are those glimpses of intimate private life that we actually need? Where can we use data as a form of communication? Because that's what data does. It allows us to have relations. And this relationality aspect is something that we are very interested in now. I think we have to kind of detach from the idea of data as a property and go to this relational aspect to see what the value actually is. In terms of data-human mediations, there are so many questions that are emerging. We understand the importance of technology. We understand that technology is not neutral. It is bringing us to certain directions. We can do that with design. Machine learning will be a huge issue. What kind of collaborations humans and machines will have? How do we cooperate them in a way that is good for us also in terms of health and society? There's a certain performativity in data. When we see data in a visualized form, it's always kind of talks to us more than if it is in the number form. So what about future research then? I'm going to go a little bit over time because, I've been doing research for 3 years, so I deserve more than 7 minutes. So one of the things is that health is not the only field that is datafying. Other fields are doing that as well. So we have to learn to look at the datafication of health in relation to these other fields as well. Banking, workplace productivity. Going back to the question, do we want people to be flagged for their burnout? This is a question of workplace productivity. It's not necessarily a question of health. What is happening to health with all these sensors and whatever? It's actually being transformed. Our idea of health is transforming into activity. Is that actually what we think that health is? What happens to social determinants of health? How do we as a society keep these different kinds of health streams in a healthy balance in relation to each other? Data initiatives, MyData is one of them. There are others, actually many, Open Health, Health Bank. They're all trying to do similar things, but now the thing is, how do we keep them moving? We have already seen, there's also a healthcare platform record, Tallinn is closing today. That was an early attempt to generate something in this field. Will all of these platforms also fail if we don't boost them somehow as a society? So if we are trying to articulate concepts such as sharing and public good through these platforms, we actually have to help them. And then data activism. Why do we need data activism? We are in the MyData conference. Because it can demonstrate us where to go. We need to think of not unintended consequences of technology, but intended consequences of technology. What do we want the technology to do in terms of social justice, equality, new forms of agency, political participation, collective action?